Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monster Report Live here on YouTube and on Facebook. My name is Nick Adam Poling. I'm the host of the Monster Report. Monster Report's a show highlighting those entertaining creatures of film history. So we talk all kinds of tokusatsu, Godzilla, anything with giant monsters, whether they're rubber-suited men or CGI-generated creatures, whether they're comic books, film, small screen, big screen, what have you. So it's good to have you here to talk some fun entertainment. Tell you a quick story here after we get some of this out of the way. You gotta like and subscribe. So if you're here tuning in, like my good friend Everett in the chat, he's at work, but he is watching. I hope he's also paying attention to work. I watch sometimes at work too, so don't tell anyone. But we've got you get in the chat. So if you're in the chat, atomic blast that like button and follow the Monster Report on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. And obviously like, subscribe, comment, and join us in the chat. And I got a great guest here talking some Shin Ultraman. So quick story to get out of the way. And one of the first impressions I had of the IP that is Ultraman was coincidentally through Godzilla, which some of us is kind of through Godzilla that maybe we got introduced to some of the television shows that were happening in Japan during the Showa era and beyond. So I remember watching a trailer for when I was probably 8-9 years old for Godzilla versus Megalon. And, there's Godzilla doing his, crazy kick across the screen, and he's kicking Megalon. There's Gigan in certain shots, and there's also what looks to be a giant robot or cyborg. And mistakenly, someone had told me, well, that's got to be Ultraman. Later, of course, we know it's Jet Jaguar, and saw the film on VHS and was kind of disappointed because I thought, wow, such a cool name, Ultraman. And Jet Jaguar wasn't bad, but found out, very much inspired by the works of Tsuburaya, also worked on Godzilla, and we have this show called Ultraman and a whole series of shows with the Ultraman name and IP attached to it. And so here we are, 2023, and since the original show came out, we have had lots of Ultraman IP, but on the big screen here in the United States, we have someone to thank for bringing it over from Japan so we could see it in that Fathom events. And I'm going to bring in Mr. Jeff Gomez of Starlight Runner Productions, CEO of that. And
how you doing?
Good to have you, Jeff.
Fantastic to be here, Nick. It's amazing to be on the Monster Report, a dream come true, if you will. And the reason is because I'm a fan, and the level of passion and genuineness that you put into the show is just, I really feel it. And so it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And always great talking with kaiju fans and kaiju content creators. And, I think we're all better together because, there's tons of IP out there, but we always kind of go back to what we love. What really is deep inside of us is we're giant monster fans, kaiju fans, and the Japanese IP that, you grew up with, I grew up with. It's got a special place in our hearts. And so I love bringing people on to talk about this kind of stuff. We could talk about this kind of stuff all day, right?
Oh, absolutely. It used to be kind of a lonely situation. You'd only find somebody who really loved the stuff once in a great while. In the pre-internet days, it was a real rarity. So, it's just amazing to me that so many people can talk about it and gather together and watch shows like yours.
Absolutely. And, it's funny, we have the American Godzillas, the legendary pictures. We had the Sony classic, Sony film in 1998. But as far as some of the other giant monster IP, not a lot has happened on the big screen for us. So it is refreshing to see now theaters actually getting filled at that Fathom event. My theater was very small, probably in the 30s, but I'd say 25 of the seats were occupied by people. And I'm hearing more and more that Shin Ultraman has definitely hit a mark with those Fathom events, just 2 days. But I think that's just fantastic. And
in movie theaters 2 days, but if you look at the top 10 movies of the past week, it's like number 6 or number 5, compared with Avatar and Wakanda Forever and the Whitney Houston movie, and there's Shin Ultraman. So it's just mind blowing.
Yeah, it could be a highly competitive film, and definitely one to throw Hollywood maybe a little curveball to say, hey, maybe we could support some of this, and it's not so niche. We'll get a few more chats in here, and we'll get into kind of your kaiju background and what brought you up as a kaiju fan. Sure. So we've got. Go ahead.
Do notice that Hollywood has taken notice. Netflix has made quite a commitment to Ultraman with the anime that's on Netflix right now, season 3 coming out this spring, and an Ultraman feature film next year with animation by Industrial Light and Magic. So that's a major feature that's coming up, produced in Hollywood. So yeah, they've taken notice.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course we had the Singular Point anime series. So right. They're seeing the IPs coming across. So Netflix is saying, hey, this is definitely something worth looking at. It's we've got Walter in the chat. Good to see you, Jedi Granville. Of course, we've got Everett again. Minority probably like Jet Jaguar more than.
I like them too.
Yeah, miss Shin Ultraman in theaters, but definitely picking up the physical media, and that's going to be definitely worth This film has the rewatchability. I mean, I could definitely say there's going to be things that I missed on that first viewing.
Enormous detail, enormous, and I appreciate the filmmakers for putting that much detail in it.
Yeah, it gives it that chance to catch the things you missed before. Shin Godzilla was very similar in that vein. So if they show it at G-Fest, I know they've shown Shin Ultraman at a few other venues in Chicago, LA, New York, Canada, prior to this Fathom event. And so some people have had the chance to see it earlier. Maybe they'll show it G-Fest this summer. We'll see.
Any excuse to go to G-Fest. Right. I'd love to.
There you go. Yeah. So all of us kind of have a starting point. Where did it begin for you to get you into kaiju films and big screen and small screen?
When you're really small and the world is a little scary and problematic, you want to identify with something big and tough. And it started out being dinosaurs for me. So from very, very young, 2-3 years old, I was playing with those plastic dinosaurs. And so seeing anything like dinosaurs on TV was just, mind blowing. And of course, one of the very first dinosaur-like creatures I ever saw was a Godzilla film. And that was really, really quite striking for me, both in terms of the sheer destructive power of this creature. It was unstoppable. I wanted to be unstoppable, and the fact that although misunderstood, he was kind of a good guy for a lot of his career, and I like that. I like the idea of something that was not well understood, but sort of was trying to do the right thing. That became a recurring theme for Jeff Gomez, all the way up through Frodo Baggins and the contemporary pop culture that I love so much. So it was Godzilla movies, and then during a trip to Puerto Rico, because my dad kind of moved away and lived there, and so I had to visit him every summer. I was caught in an ocean of stuff that I didn't understand. I didn't speak Spanish, and And one day in an after-school TV show that they had, Telemundo Infantil, they showed episodes of Ultra 7. This was in the early 1970s. And I just couldn't believe it because it looked so good. It was very cinematic. And this character, the design sensibility of Ultra 7 is so cool with that plate and the boomerang crest on his head and so forth. It was awesome. The uniforms that the Science Patrol wore, and the monster designs were so iconic. They live through to this day, don't they? And so I was completely transfixed, and thus began the search for the Ultras by Jeff Gomez for the rest of my life.
And little did you know there was so much more to discover.
I only began to get an inkling when they reran the Ultraman show in Puerto Rico after the Ultra 7s were done. So I started to get the impression that there were multiple incarnations of this character, but I didn't realize the scope of it until my family moved to Hawaii in 1975, and the full force of tokusatsu had washed over the island like a tidal wave. It was truly, truly breathtaking. That was the height of the Showa era.
And so, yeah, in Hawaii, the IP was coming across on broadcast television, so you could experience it there.
Absolutely. There were the Henshin superhero shows, the Super Sentai shows, and the individual, metal hero shows like Kikaider, Kamen Rider, Inazuman, Rainbow Man, you name it, they were there. And then on a different channel, they showed the Subaraya shows like Ultra 7.
Okay.
And Return of Ultraman, yeah.
My kids are running around all the time because I've just introduced them to Ultra 7, and constantly, anytime they hear the number 7, 7, 7, 7. So,
Far among the galaxy. Yep, absolutely. But that was a shining moment, a year and a half in Hawaii, and then Mom decided to go home to New York, and there was just nothing. It was a complete a vacuum of that kind of stuff. The occasional appearance in a monster magazine or something like that, but it was a lonely time, once in a while there'd be a release in movie theaters. Godzilla 1985, they called it in the United States, was Return of Godzilla, and but that was it, man. It was tough.
Yeah. So there was a real longing for more, but yeah, home video was still kind of in its infancy, and a lot of the classic Godzillas weren't even available. I remember as a kid searching far and wide for the entire library to just find.
Same here. Yeah. Back then, you would go to a comic book convention, buy a video compilation of different tokusatsu shows, bring it home, and then the tape would go blank halfway through. And that was it. There's no way to do anything about it. So it was tough.
Yeah, in the days pre-internet. So that must have planted something in you to do more than just just find a 9-to-5 job somewhere, to pursue some sort of career that maybe you felt like you could expand creatively.
It was being in my situation, growing up the way I did, the possibility to actually explore that was very, very slim. It was not something that I considered seriously, to be honest, Nick. It was, that was beyond my dreams. So really, the only thing I could do was integrate those concepts and ideas into fantasy role-playing games. So I would run Dungeons and Dragons games with my friends that were set in semi-futuristic Japanese type settings, and and create robot superheroes, or base my villains on some of the coolest villains from Kikaider and Kikaider 01 and stuff like that, and convey some of the emotional gravity of those shows, because they were so serious and kind of adult conceptually. The android in search of a conscience, that kind of thing was just cool and serious, and the imagination wasn't difficult to adapt to these gaming environments, and my players just loved it, and they saw it as all new. So that was awesome. That was a pleasure to convey. And then the leap for me came when I started writing about how to create serious role-playing games and role-play game storytelling, and write about it in magazines and things like that in the 1980s, and then get recognized for that work and asked to start to develop games. So that was my entry into the entertainment industry, game writing.
Okay. And so, yeah, so game writing, was it all into the RPG role playing kind of games like the Dungeons and Dragons style games?
Yeah, actually, the first game writing I did was for Robotech. Do you know that anime series?
I do. Yes.
There was a company that had the license to Robotech, and I pitched them. I loved Lancer from New Generation, and I said, let's do a sequel to New Generation that finds out what happened to Lancer, and they said okay, and so I started writing game modules for them. And then I was able to start doing that for companies across the business, and made friends with the people from Wizards of the Coast who made Magic the Gathering, and that allowed me to start writing for Magic.
Oh, wow. And that was a huge RPG style game when I was in high school. A lot of my friends played the Magic the Gathering series. And
yeah, it started as a trading card game, and I helped turn it into comic books, video games, novels, websites, things like that.
wow. And yeah, and that is, that really stretches the creativity because of the open worldness.
That's right.
Those kind of games.
But all of that was influenced by Japanese popular culture, because the Japanese, because of the free and easy way that intellectual property moved across different companies and different toy companies and different publishing companies in Japan, allowed for Japanese storytellers to tell vast, sprawling universe kind of stories, where there can be multiple Ultraman series, all kind of set within a loosely connected continuum, right? Galaxy Express 999 and Captain Harlock and Queen Esmeralda of 1,000 Years. They all were set in the same anime universe. And I just was completely enchanted by the notion that you can stay within the same story world and enjoy it no matter what media platform you happen to be on.
And so, yeah, you're right. Yeah, when it comes to like the universe of Ultraman, we have the new film, which somewhat it is a reboot, but we also have all of the other series. You can take or leave the fact that they may be connected in some way, but the characters, of course, are what make it or what draw us to it. And Ultraman as a character, as the hero that we embrace, he has that he traverses all of these storylines, and the hero, giant robot, cyborg, whatever you want to call him, is something definitely to cling to. And he hits that giant monster slash mecha feeling, but he also hits the superhero feeling.
Of course, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the beauty of Ultraman. In a way, often they feel like reboots, but in another way, they kind of exist within a kind of continuum. It's a word we're going to be using more often this coming year on Ultraman Connection, where I work, the fact that they're in kind of adjacent dimensions, canonized by the Ultra Galaxy Fight series that's on YouTube, is indicative of the fact that there is a way for these characters to intermingle and go on adventures together and defend all of their combined realities. So that's awesome to me. That's the kind of universe that was flying through my mind when I was a kid, that never seemed to fully manifest in the American pop culture that I loved so much.
And so being able to be out there, to put yourself out there, take the risks of starting to figuring out the rights, which were probably very convoluted. I can only imagine the headache that might have caused one to get into international rights with Subaraya and the IP of Ultraman, and how for a while there it was very questionable. But kind of bring us to speed as to where it came from there, and your involvement into that, and ultimately where we are today.
Well, actually, fortunately, the rights issue and the legal entanglements that Ultraman was in, were resolved just as I was coming on board for Subaraya Productions. There had been a real problem. There was an international agreement that was reneged upon by the other party in the 1990s. And it created a legal problem that prevented Subaraya from properly leveraging the Ultraman franchise in the United States and the rest of the world. So only in Japan, could it proliferate until that problem was resolved. Ultimately, it was resolved in the 2017, 2018, thereabout. And once it was, they reached out to a licensing company called the Licensing Group in Los Angeles, and said, "Hey, we're ready to bring Ultraman back to the world." And I had the tremendous good fortune to know Danny Simon, the CEO of the Licensing Group, and by accident, kind of almost overhear the fact that he was dealing with Ultraman. And I said, "Excuse me, what's going on?" and he said, "Do you know anything about this thing?" What is he? Is he a superhero? Is he a robot? And so forth. And I said, "Let me count the ways. Let's talk about it." And he wound up taking me to Japan, and imagine the fantasy of being able to go to Subaraya Productions, this company where E.G. Subaraya, the founder of Subaraya Productions, he created Godzilla. He created this pantheon of Toho monsters, and he was the creator of Ultraman and this incredible franchise. Not to mention, Jumborg Ace and Fireman and all these other incredible Japanese heroes. And to be able to express myself to their board, the CEO, everyone was in the room, and to tell them what it meant for me, and what the meaning and messages of Ultraman were to me, and by extension, potentially to all North Americans and the rest of the world, what a dream come true, you know. And they resonated with what I had to say. They believed me and in me, and that allowed me to become the producer of Ultraman Connection, the franchise extension into North America and the rest of the world.
Well, excellent. And I know that prior to it being called Ultraman Connection, it had a different name, I think.
That's right. Ultraman Galaxy was how we started it. Ultra Galaxy Fight was in production at the time, and we wanted to tie into that, and it was just a simple website. It was just, you know, we post some news every now and then on the site. But it did so well, Nick, that Tsuburaya, you know, wanted to expand their presence in the United States and help to build the fan base. So I recruited some friends of mine at Elevate Pictures. They're based in Columbus, Ohio. And together, Starlight Runner and Elevate joined forces to become Iceberg Theory. And our endeavor was to bring Ultraman full force to American fandom. And that meant a makeover of Ultraman Galaxy into Ultraman Connection and all the events you've been seeing from us over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I was tuning into Ultraman Day and really just enjoying seeing the cast and of was it Decker, I believe, you know, the show, yeah, doing their moves, introducing themselves, and even having that stage performance that they did, which was incredible. I mean, I was hooked, and that was just fun to watch. And I was really glad to see that, you know, yes, with COVID, I know the Japanese actors and all that, they still want to be very much attached to the masks and all, but they had the kind of transparent masks, so we could see their faces, we could see them speaking, and really get their emotions coming out as they were explaining themselves, even despite the fact they're speaking Japanese. We had a good translator on that video stream, so we were able to keep up.
Sean, he's a great friend. Absolutely. So just to let your audience, fill your audience in on the arc of my career, when I did that Magic the Gathering stuff, my career took off, and so I developed this philosophy about universes, story worlds, and endeavored to help Hollywood studios turn their movies into multi-platform or transmedia franchises, story worlds. This is long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And even before the Star Wars universe became a canonical multi-platform franchise. You know, there were kind of semi-official novels for Star Wars, but they weren't official as far as George Lucas was concerned. And that always bugged me. I wanted the content that I enjoyed across different media to count, to be real as a part of the story world. So I started to do that for companies like Mattel and the Walt Disney Company and Sony Pictures, and started to work on these amazing franchises like Pirates of the Caribbean and Avatar, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for Nickelodeon. Really, really huge fun. So that cachet, that ability to produce these universe Bibles and supervise the implementation of those Bibles across different media, really convinced Tsuburaya to let me help them out, and so the big difference between Hollywood and Tsuburaya was that Hollywood would never let me talk to the fans. They were like, "Oh, you don't want to deal with them. It's nothing but trouble. You know, we don't want, you know, fan movies and fan content. It's a copyright issue, all that sort of silliness." And So I asked Subarai, would you let us do that? Would you let us cultivate the fan base of Ultraman? There are some Ultraman fans there. There are the Nick Adamses, who remember and love the franchise, who can be apostles for it, who can speak the word to preach. And they said, sure. uh, so then I thought, well, what's the fantasy of what we'd love to see and interact with? And it was these live events, the ability to watch the celebrities, the stars of the show, and even to watch the ultras themselves battle kaiju live in the studio, the way they do on stage in Japan sometimes. And so Iceberg Theory created these virtual events live from Tokyo, and beamed them into everyone's living room who was a member of Ultraman Connection.
Yeah, and I'd encourage people to head to Ultraman Connection if you haven't and get yourself logged in, plugged into it, and check out those live events. I'm sure you can see the past events still on there. And
just a few. Some of them are ticketed, so they actually will cost money to see, and we take those off. But I'm working on a plan to bring some of them back for members, or figure out a model to bring all that great content back.
And the choreography, that was top notch, because one of the best things I've found about actors when they can actually do choreographed fights and all that, you get your stuntmen. Obviously, the stuntmen are, obviously very talented at what they do, but when you can really see them, and it is live, so there is no take two. So they're out there doing their moves, and it is truly impressive to see them, on their game, doing all of those moves and without the cuts of the cameras and all that. So truly impressive work.
A nerdy aside, when I was a kid, a little kid, the dream was to be Godzilla, to perform Godzilla. And once in a long, long while, there'd be a glimpse of the fact that there was a guy, wearing that costume, sweating to death, but performing as the monster, moving through the miniature city, battling the other guy in the suit. And that was a heartfelt dream that kind of came and went. And all these years later, I have had the incredible experience of being backstage for those live performances, where the suit actors, which is what they're called in Japan, are performing as ultras and as a kaiju. So I got to see what the rituals were like in terms of how this was, how they suited up, how they're so dear. They're wonderful. They care about each other's safety. They're young guys, and they're acrobats, really. So they're really good. So to watch this and then watch them go out on stage, and I'm just a few feet away watching from backstage this incredible choreography. It's really, really something I have great appreciation for, the work that they do.
Yeah, to be a fly on the wall, to see the training, the rehearsals, what go into that. I've seen a lot of Disney theater stage productions and how impressive their cast and crew. But Disney obviously has their their very high standards. But what I was seeing from that live event, I would put it right up against anything that they would produce, because again, safety is paramount. There could be injuries, and then what do? You're live. They pulled it off really well, and I think that's definitely something to see, a sight to behold, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next production that they put on.
I really look forward to the day where there can be a tour, where there can be, I want Ultraman to be popular enough for people to want to go to a live theater and watch the show on stage.
Oh, absolutely. And, I mentioned to people when we talk a little about peripheral IP like the Power Rangers / Super Sentai. And I, mentioned, yeah, you're not seeing those kids in Angel Grove in the outfits. That's your Japanese stuntmen stuntmen and women who are incredibly talented at what they do. But, you're not going to put your lead actors in those suits, risking injury and all of that they can't continue on with their character. But then we as kaiju fans, of course, start figuring out the names of the suit actors. We know Satoshi Bin Furuya. We know Haru Nakajima. We put them up on these pedestals because we realize that that is the character that they are embodying, not just moving legs and arms. They are literally becoming Ultraman or Godzilla or
right.
Gomez.
Distinct body language. Absolutely. Absolutely. What I've learned, however, is that you must stick to it for a long time before that name gets out. There are a lot of suit actors who work in anonymity and who do it for the love of doing it. And they have to earn that level of esteem that the name actually kind of gets out there. Some of those suit actors we encountered at Anime Expo in Los Angeles this past summer. It was their first time in the United States, and it was wonderful to see the awe and wonder in their eyes, and to feel the love from audiences of thousands of people.
And bringing us into that and into Shin Ultraman, even director Higuchi mentioned, how reserved the Japanese audiences are. It's nothing personal. It's nothing that they're, disliking something. It's just part of the culture of being very nice and quiet and reserved and respectful. You go on public transportation a lot, and there's not a lot of chitter chatter and talking, not like in our big cities in the US where everyone's talking and everyone's got something to say very loudly. But to hear him talk about the American audiences laughing and applauding, seeing Shin Ultraman right from the first line, bursting out with emotions.
Nick, let me tell you something. Imagine this little kid who had no one to talk to, nothing about Ultraman. And decades later, I'm sitting in Lincoln Center, the great movie theater at Lincoln Center, near Shinji Higuchi. So I can see him, and the audience is packed. They let a few people in who sat on the steps on in the aisles on either side, because there were just a few left, and we begged them to let in everybody who wanted to see the picture. And when the lights go down and that first swirl happens in Shin Ultraman, which actually is the Shin Godzilla logo that swirls into Shin Ultraman, which is a funny joke because it used to be Ultra Q that swirled into Ultraman. The audience burst into applause, and there was this kind of quizzical look on Higuchi's face, like what's going on here, And then the audience would just laugh and shout and throw up their arms, and when it came time to change, everyone would stick their arms out, and then of course at the end the standing ovation. To see his face, watch that was just delightful.
Yes. Oh, to be a fly on the wall, to see that, to see his reaction, because like I said about the Japanese culture, they cover their mouths when they laugh and smile and burst out. They don't usually typically do that. Again, it's not a disrespect. It is part of the culture, but for him to experience that must have been just, completely heartwarming, and to say, you know, his film is really striking a chord with these fans, you know, in this foreign land. I think that would have been so incredible to see, and to definitely say, keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing it right.
Nick, it's a signifier. The world wants a touch of innocence. It wants a touch of the tangible. And that's what tokusatsu means. Tokusatsu means that there are elements on the screen that are actually really there, that were in front of the camera. You know, there's a dude in that suit. You know, somebody built that city. You know, and somebody cared enough to shoot it from all the way low down on the ground, or to juxtapose Ultraman with landmarks and other kinds of objects to create this a fantastic sense of scale. You know, it speaks to us, in a way, weirdly, like the Top Gun Maverick movie spoke to people. You know, when we watch that movie, our sense of reality, our sense of understanding indicated, you know what, it actually seems like there's a dude in a jet plane, you know, maneuvering around up there. And that sense of reality is tangible. It gives us a different kind of thrill than the thrill of watching all of these Marvel superheroes smack each other around, which is a kind of animated experience.
Very true. And to know what we know, that we have Satoshi Ben Furuya doing the motion capture for even a CGI generated Ultraman, but yet having that flavor of what he added, that incredible character that he developed through the motions, the moves. And when you see him, a man, I think in his late 80s, maybe, or
still going strong.
Going strong. Incredible strength to be able to do that, not in a suit, but yes, wearing the tennis balls, I'm sure, to do the motion capture, and to know that we have the original Ultraman here, actually in the flesh, as it were, performing for this great film. And there was so much of it that you could realize the fact that we were watching CGI creatures. There was so much love for the tokusatsu style of fighting.
Absolutely. And I think a miniature or two were used in the film.
Oh, well, yeah.
So, you know, it was a nice mixture, and certainly done with incredible affection.
And let's get into Shin Ultraman a little. I can tell you from who you met before our stream, my son Eli, and who was glued to this film regardless of the fact that we were watching the subtitled release. Didn't faze him one bit. He was right there with the story, and just being affected every time a new monster jumped out of the ground, or the Spacium beam is being released, and it just hit perfectly with him. And you know, I don't think there was, you know, a couple of moments where he wasn't gasping and waiting for the next thing to happen. And so, you know, so when I was enthralled with seeing this film, I mentioned I was in pain. I was dealing with some gout during that time.
About that. Yeah.
Yeah, doing better now. But it didn't take away. It could have created a negative experience. It's something we're both going to remember for the rest of our lives. And it was a film that we didn't want to end, and it did end very abruptly.
Oh, it sure did.
But I was like, man, it could just go on for another hour or two. But yeah, you're, you know, getting it to Fathom events, and I've mentioned this on my show before, where Fathom events sometimes have been kind of hit or miss. I saw Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and I think there were 4 people in the theater, and that's a film I love from, you know, my childhood. And but you know, maybe other places. I'm in Midwest Indiana here, but even in Midwest Indiana, Shin Ultraman, there it is, a nearly packed theater.
We did a tremendous job, I think, was done by Iceberg Theory, Fathom, and our various affiliates You know, a lot of it was driving the fan base and making sure that Ultraman fans really knew about it and encouraging them to bring friends. So the message that was given was, if you go, this will send a sign that there should be more, you know. And so they really supported us. Some of the fans who went had seen it at festivals and things like that already, and went again. And we chose Fathom because they were really committed to creating a program that that built awareness. You know, so it made a difference, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And then the having prior to the film, airing, having the quiz, the interviews with the actor played Kageyama and Higuchi, of course, on screen. I think that was really refreshing to like you said, making it more real. There's the real actors playing and the real director,
and over delivering a little bit. You know, creating a whole experience instead of simply just showing the movie.
Absolutely.
We even plugged Ultraman Connection there and saw a spike in membership. Membership is free, by the way, fans of the Monster Report. All you have to do is go to the site in the upper right-hand corner. You just click register, and boom, you automatically get access to the members-only content. And of course, there's plenty of news and information about Ultraman on the site.
And thank you very much for including my son and I's picture as the thumbnail for the for that article on the fans going. My little theater didn't have a poster or a LED sign in the place, but we decided let's just take a picture in our seats, and so but I saw others and with their beta capsules and their Shin Zoffies and Shin Ultramans and with their
what was funny was we were going to take photos of the in New York City at the New York City screening, and there was someone inside the theater who was enforcing not taking pictures of the crowd, like the interior of the theater, and that was like in the last minute they go, Gomez, help! We need photos to illustrate the article, and that was me looking up hashtag Ultraman or just Ultraman in general and searching for anyone who posted anything about the screening. And there was this dude with his son making monster faces, and it was just too hard to resist. And what was funny was you want a good thumbnail, and I looked at all of them and I said, who can resist this boy? So, well, there he went on to the thumbnail.
Yeah. Oh, he was on cloud nine. The rest of that, honestly, we still talk about it. And it's what's so cool. Like you have stirred up the fandom beginning at the grassroots level. That's what I'm really appreciating about what you and Ultraman Connection has been doing, is that you could, we're up here. We're going to promote it the way corporate has always told us to promote things. And you're saying, no, let me bring it down to the fans. They're the ones filling the seats. They're the ones paying the bills. They're the ones buying the merch. So I think that's a fantastic way to really get something going, where we feel sometimes disconnected from the showrunners of something, the directors and all of that. And these guys are very real with you, and they're approachable. I remember meeting so many of them at G-Fests and other conventions, and how much they appreciate their fandom. And that's fantastic.
Nick, the very first convention I ever went to was called Mini Trek Con 2. And the featured guy was George Takei. And to go to it, this was in 1972, 73. I was a little kid, but to go to it and see all these people who love this thing that I love but hardly even understood, but the passion there, and the fact that Takei was there and he signed my book and spent a few minutes with me, asking me questions and things like that, I was on cloud nine. I couldn't believe the love and fulfillment that I felt being involved with that. And it's funny, I've now studied, how worldwide franchises take off and persist across time. And it has little to do with the company and everything to do with fan ardor, fan love. So why do anything else than to focus attention on cultivating the fan base, and to let people know that if they like tokusatsu in general, they'll like this. If they like Power Rangers, check this out. If they like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, here's a superhero universe that has its own integrity and originality. Check it out, and that's how things grow.
Absolutely. And when we post about it, when we talk about it, when I bring that article up with friends of mine and they're like, oh, you went to see a movie, what was it? And they're expecting to hear something like that, Marvel or what have you. And I tell them it's this Ultraman, and I got to check out this Ultraman. It sounds interesting. So suddenly, it's stirred up in some people, and in some cases, maybe they've heard of it. It's on the peripheries. It's been, out there on broadcast television or what have you. Funny enough, my first actual exposure to Ultraman was the Australian Towards the Future series, which I still love.
Sure.
Yeah, we collected all of the toys. There was a limited toy run, and that was me wanting to take something tangible from the series that I watched so much of, and
absolutely
being able to have it on hand. And I think that's you're yourself are a collector, I see. And so having something, like you said, tangible to bring home, a part of tokusatsu.
Exactly. One of our goals this coming year is the big question we get is, where do I start? Do I have to go back to the 1960s and watch this stuff? Where are their access points, and how do I understand how this universe works? So we're working on content on the Ultraman Connection site, and even some content, the motion picture content, to help with that. And that's one of the things that I think the Netflix content is going to do.
Yeah. And being able to see it now, not on broadcast television, but on DVD, Blu-ray, with all the new releases with Mill Creek. And we had, what I think it was Shout, I think, had some releases, and maybe Arrow. I don't remember all the different companies that did the releases, but I do know the Blu-rays, very impressive transfer for something that was, again, a 4:3 ratio broadcast television show. I think that being able to go back to those original films and being able to extract that much to make a high definition picture image show up on the screen, it's almost like watching it brand new again. And I think that's great to see that, seeing the Ultra 7, Ultra Q, even in black and white. Ultra Q looks great on Blu-ray. So that's fantastic.
I've seen 4K of Ultra Q, and it's astounding. They're taking care. These are historic, these shows, and so they're really curating the old ones well. And the Japanese have a great love for tangible media, so that those prints remained in pretty good condition to allow for Mill Creek to do what it's done. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and I remember the books that came with one of the original series, like volume 2, and it had all of the different kaiju laid out, their abilities, their names. Sometimes, in the show, you might search for their names and not find it. And there's my son. It's like, oh yeah, he's coming up soon. It's
there you go.
it's like, let's watch the first one with Bemular, and so things like that really, it's not just a cheapo, take home video kind of thing. They really put the love and effort into it and to make something that was that was something you'll watch over and over again.
Sure. My team wrote those booklets that are in the early Mill Creek DVDs. Yeah.
I keep telling them, be careful with those booklets because I don't want them ruined or, dented up and scratched up. And also, thank you for that, because that really does bring it to us. We have, books we can go out there and find, but that one being included with the set, it's right there for us to look at as a reference anytime. So yeah, before, like, for instance, the Pigmon came on, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember Pigmon. Let's watch that one. He's friendly. It's okay. He's yeah. So thank you for doing that, and of course, again, all the promotion that you are doing to bring Ultraman over here, where there has been a large just a void where we've had very little of the Ultraman IP coming over. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what is coming up next as Shin Ultraman rises in popularity and we get a home video release. And we'll give you the chance to plug Ultraman Connection and any other social outlets you'd like.
Wonderful.
Start wrapping up here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This year is going to be fantastic with filled with Ultraman. Every month or so, there's going to be something new and cool coming out of Subaraya Productions, and we'll be, keeping everyone up to date, up to the minute on UltramanConnection.com. So anyone and everyone watching the Monster Report, run on over to UltramanConnection.com and register. It's free of charge, and you'll be able to see entire series. I think we've got Ultraman Z on there, and Ultraman Trigger, and there are more coming soon. Also, you can follow me at Jeff_Gomez. That's on Twitter, at Jeff_Gomez. Make sure you put the underscore there, because the other Jeff Gomez, he's not happy. It's not happy. If you're business minded, connect with me through LinkedIn. Just look up Jeff Gomez on LinkedIn. You can see information about myself and my work as a story world builder by putting my name into YouTube. I've given lots of video presentations about story world building and storytelling across different media. I even have a TED Talk. So just look up Jeff Gomez TEDx, and you'll find my TED Talk about my how tokusatsu influenced me and impacted my career.
Okay, so great social outlets there, and obviously UltramanConnection.com. Everyone should be going there immediately. Open up your next tab and sign up. And we also had Godzilla Fan Freaks here, who had them. We had our audience enthralled. There was they were just listening to your every word. So thank you for watching.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, and liking, subscribing, all of those great things. And I'm looking forward to what's happening next with Ultraman Connection. Stay connected with the Monster Report, because I want to definitely be part of the movement that promotes the new tokusatsu across North America here too, because I want to see more of this. I want to enjoy it with my children and into the next generation who's going to continue loving this IP. So
I heard a rumor that the Noob is onto you, Nick, and the Monster Report. The Noob is watching your videos, and she will be doing a story about the Monster Report on Ultraman Connection.
Excellent. Yes.
So, I'm very happy about that. Hopefully you'll get a chance to talk to her. She's fantastic. And guys, it's been fantastic to be here. What a wonderful conversation, Nick. It warms my heart that you're doing this for your audience, and consider me a fan, and I'm with everybody who watches you.
Well, thank you again. You've been very generous with your time, the information that you've given us, and the conversation. It is priceless, and we're definitely going to have you as a guest in the future when we have the next drop of any kind of Ultraman content, or if we just want to talk any other kind of kaiju.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything related to that. So we'll wrap up here, and don't go anywhere, Jeff. We'll say our proper goodbyes after we're off of the stream. And thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Monster Report with me, Nick Adam Poling, and my special guest, Jeff Gomez of Ultraman Connection. Go out there to ultramanconnection.com, connect, and be part of the Ultra movement that's happening. And as I'm going to sign off here, I'd like to tell everyone, Schwatch!
Watch.